Welcome back to Teen to MD. Today, we are diving into a question that might feel a little personal. Who decides you're at risk in medicine? And how are those risk categories created long before you even step foot in a clinic? When a doctor says someone is at risk, it sounds like a judgment about your specific body, your choices, your health. It feels personal. But here's the thing, in medicine, risk isn't usually based on a doctor's gut feeling or intuition. It's built on a mountain of data from huge groups of people. Researchers analyze these large populations, track patterns of disease, and calculate probabilities. From all those patterns, they create thresholds. When your personal health numbers like your blood pressure or cholesterol cross a certain line, you get labeled at risk. So let's break down how this works. Medical risk categories all start with massive studies. Scientists will observe thousands, sometimes millions, of people over many years. They look for factors that are associated with higher rates of certain diseases. These could be things like blood pressure levels, cholesterol numbers, body mass index, or even your family history. Once they find these connections, expert panels write guidelines based on the research. These guidelines are what define what's considered low, moderate, or high risk. Then, individual patients like you and me are compared to these population-wide averages. Your personal health is essentially measured against a giant statistical backdrop. Now, who sets these thresholds? It's not your family doctor drawing a line in the sand. These cutoffs are determined by committees and panels of experts. These groups review all the available research and debate where to draw the lines. For example, they decide what blood pressure level is high enough to start treatment, or at what age we should begin screening for certain cancers. These decisions are complex because they involve weighing the potential benefits against the potential harms. If you lower a threshold, you identify more people as being at risk. This can lead to earlier treatment and save lives, which is great. Overtreatment treating a condition that might never have caused a problem. The exact placement of that line is often a subject of intense debate before it's finalized. The way risk is communicated to you also really matters. You might hear two terms, relative risk and absolute risk. It's crucial to understand the difference. Relative risk tells you how much more likely an outcome is for one group compared to another. For example, a headline might say a new drug reduces the risk of a heart attack by 50%. That sounds amazing, right? But then there's absolute risk, which describes the actual probability of that event happening. Let's say your original risk of having a heart attack was very small to begin with, maybe just 2%. A 50% reduction in relative risk would bring your absolute risk down to 1%. The difference is only 1 percentage point. So while the relative risk sounds huge, the absolute benefit might be minimal. How a doctor frames the risk can dramatically influence how you interpret your own health status and the decisions you make. Here's a really important point to remember. Being labeled at risk does not mean a disease is guaranteed to happen. It's not a destiny. It simply means your probability of developing that condition is higher compared to a baseline group. This distinction is so often misunderstood and can cause a lot of unnecessary fear. A person might live for decades with a risk factor and never, ever develop the associated condition. Think of it this way. Risk categories describe trends across populations, not certainties for individuals. Understanding this can help reduce a lot of anxiety. It's about probability, not prophecy. Another thing that can be confusing is that these guidelines and risk definitions are always evolving. They change as new evidence comes in. Screening ages might shift up or down. Treatment thresholds get revised. New biomarkers are discovered and added to the mix. These changes can make people feel like the medical community can't make up its mind. But what it really reflects is the process of scientific refinement. As our data gets better and more detailed, the risk categories are adjusted to better balance the benefits and harms for the population as a whole. It's a sign that science is working, not that it's indecisive. Furthermore, individual factors can really complicate the picture. You could have two people with the exact same lab results, but they might have very different overall risks. This is because genetics, lifestyle choices, and other health conditions, what doctors call comorbidities, all play a role. To account for this, some doctors use risk calculators. These tools try to combine multiple variables into a single, more personalized risk score. They aim to make the predictions more tailored to you. But even these sophisticated tools still rely on averages from large populations. There's always a degree of individual variation that no calculator can fully capture, and risk isn't purely biological. That's a huge shift in modern medical thinking. Social determinants of health matter immensely. Things like your access to quality healthcare, the food available in your neighborhood, your daily stress levels, and your exposure to environmental pollutants all influence your probability of disease. Medicine is increasingly recognizing that risk categories need to consider more than just lab values and genetics. The broader context of a person's life shapes their health outcomes just as much as their internal physiology. So, what does this all mean for you, the patient? It means shared decision-making is essential. Because risk is all about probabilities, not certainties. Decisions about whether to start a screening test or a new treatment often require a deep conversation. Your doctor will present the data, the statistics, and the guidelines. But you bring your personal values, your tolerance for uncertainty, and your feelings about potential side effects to the table. The label of at risk might begin with data, but the action you take depends on a shared judgment between you and your healthcare provider. It's the perfect blend of statistics and human preference. So, to wrap it all up, when you hear urea at risk in a medical context, remember where that label comes from. It's the end result of extensive population research, careful review by expert guidelines, and probabilistic thresholds. It is not a prediction of your future with 100% certainty, but rather an estimate of your likelihood. Understanding who defines risk and how those definitions are created helps clarify that these medical categories are just tools, they are not final verdicts on your health. Risk is shaped by data, it's refined through debate, and it must be interpreted within your own individual context. Recognizing this can make the whole concept feel a lot less intimidating and help you become a more informed partner in your own healthcare. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.